You've seen it 100 times. You ask something of your horse, a transition, a lateral movement, a moment of collection. And then you release the pressure. You soften your leg, you give with your hand, you exhale. And your horse does it too. That jaw starts to move. The tongue slips out, slow and deliberate. The ears shift slightly. The head drops just an inch or two. And those big, powerful jaws begin to work, not chewing anything, just moving. Rhythmic, quiet. And you felt it, didn't you? That warmth in your chest, that quiet pride. You thought, he got it. She's happy. We connected. You've been told that's what it means. Maybe by a trainer, maybe by a book, maybe by an online community of people who love horses as deeply as you do. Licking and chewing equals relaxation. Licking and chewing equals acceptance. And licking and chewing means you did it right. But here's what almost no one in that conversation tells you. That moment, the one you've been reading as a reward, as a green light, as proof that your horse is content, is actually something far more complex than you've been led to believe. And understanding what it truly is will not make you a worse horse person. It will make you a profoundly better one. Because the horses who share their lives with people who understand this signal don't just perform better. They trust more. They offer more. They carry less of what they should never have had to carry in the first place. So let's go back to that moment. The release, the quiet, the jaw moving slowly in the afternoon light. What is your horse actually telling you? The answer begins not in the arena, not in the round pen, and not in the centuries-old relationship between horse and human, but in something much older, something that was wired into your horse's nervous system long before the first person ever threw a leg over a horse's back. Something that has kept horses alive on open plains for millions of years, in a world where the cost of a wrong read was not a bad training session. It was death. It begins in the body's most ancient alarm system. Every horse, every single one, no matter how well trained, no matter how gentle, no matter how many years they've spent in partnership with humans, has a nervous system built for survival in a world of predators. That system, known as the autonomic nervous system, operates largely outside of conscious control. It governs heart rate, breathing, digestion, a muscle tension. Every physiological function that determines whether an animal is ready to run for its life or safe enough to rest. The autonomic nervous system has two primary branches. The first is the sympathetic branch, which you might know as the fight-or-flight response. When a horse perceives threat, or pressure, or confusion, or discomfort, the sympathetic system activates instantly and completely. Heart rate climbs, breathing quickens and becomes shallow. Muscles tense and prepare for explosive movement. Blood is redirected away from the digestive organs and toward the large muscle groups. Salivation decreases, the pupils dilate, and every non-essential function, digestion, immune response, restoration, is put on hold. The body redirects every available resource toward one single goal: survive this moment. The second branch is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is sometimes called the rest and digest state, and it is the physiological opposite of the sympathetic response. When the threat passes, when the pressure is released, when the body determines it is safe again, the parasympathetic system begins to slowly reclaim control. Heart rate drops back toward baseline. Breathing deepens and slows. Muscles lose their emergency tension. Blood flow returns to the digestive organs. Salivation increases, and the body begins the quiet, complex work of restoring itself to equilibrium. Horses, as prey animals, are exquisitely sensitive to this transition. Their nervous systems shift between these two states with a speed and completeness that is difficult for humans, who are predators, physiologically, to fully appreciate. But a horse can go from complete calm to full sympathetic activation in under 1 second. And the return journey, the path from high alert back to true rest, takes considerably longer and requires the right conditions to complete properly. And here is where everything you thought you knew about licking and chewing gets reframed. When a horse licks and chews, the jaw movement, the tongue, the rhythmic motion of those powerful muscles, these are intimately connected to the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. The act of chewing itself stimulates the vagus nerve, one of the longest and most complex nerves in the mammalian body, which runs from the brainstem all the way down through the heart, lungs, and digestive system. Vagal activation, what neuroscientists sometimes call the vagal brake, is one of the primary mechanisms by which the body downregulates from a stress response. It slows the heart, deepens the breath, and initiates the physiological processes associated with digestion and restoration. Salivation, which accompanies the licking behavior, is also a direct parasympathetic response. The salivary glands are essentially switched off during sympathetic activation, which is why fear and intense stress cause a dry mouth in horses and humans alike, and switched back on when the parasympathetic system regains influence. The appearance of saliva, the willingness of the jaw to move, the ease of the tongue, these are physiological events, not behavioral choices. Your horse is not deciding to lick and chew to tell you something. Their body is doing what bodies do when they begin to come back from the edge of the sympathetic response. Let that sit for a moment. Licking and chewing is not your horse saying, "I am happy. I am relaxed. I enjoyed that." Licking and chewing is your horse's body saying, "The pressure has been removed. The perceived threat is resolving. I am beginning to return to myself." Those are not the same thing. And the difference between them is enormous. Not because one is bad and one is good, but because they point toward completely different questions. The first interpretation closes the conversation. You did well? Move on. The second interpretation opens it. What was the horse experiencing before this moment? And what do they need right now to complete the recovery? Think about it from a purely observational standpoint. When does licking and chewing appear? You don't see it during a calm, relaxed grooming session where there's been no pressure at all. You don't see it when your horse is grazing peacefully in a field, completely unbothered by demands or requests. You don't see it in the middle of a flowing trot where everything is easy and there's no tension anywhere. You see it specifically, almost exclusively, in the moments after pressure has been released, after a request has been made and then withdrawn, after something difficult has been asked and then allowed to resolve, after the horse has worked through confusion or resistance or a new physical demand. The signal is not about what just happened being good. The signal is about what just happened being over. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first glance, because if you've been reading this signal purely as confirmation that your horse is thriving, you may have been missing an entire layer of communication that your horse has been offering you every single session. You may have been celebrating moments that actually deserved more attention, more time, more presence. Now, before we go further, and we are going to go much further, let's be clear about something. This is not a critique of you, or of natural horsemanship, or of the traditions that have helped millions of people form genuinely better relationships with their horses. Teachers and trainers across the natural horsemanship world have done profound work in bringing awareness to horse body language and in moving the equestrian community away from purely force-based methods towards something more thoughtful and relational. The fact that licking and chewing became a recognized signal within those communities is real progress. The question isn't whether you were paying attention. You clearly were. The question is, now that we have better tools, better research, better ways of understanding what's happening physiologically in your horse, are you willing to let the picture get more detailed, even if it complicates something you thought was simple? Because here is what the science is now telling us, and it is both humbling and fascinating. A team of researchers at Utrecht University in the Netherlands spent years investigating the relationship between behavioral signals and physiological stress responses in horses during training. Their work was part of a broader effort to develop more objective welfare assessment tools, ways of measuring what a horse is actually experiencing, not just what a horse appears to be experiencing from the outside. One of their core findings cut directly to the heart of the licking and chewing question. They measured heart rate variability, cortisol levels, and behavioral signals simultaneously in horses across a range of training scenarios. What they found was striking. Horses that appeared behaviorally calm, soft eyes, low head carriage, no obvious tension in the body, no resistance, were frequently showing physiological markers consistent with active stress recovery, not baseline calm. The cortisol hadn't fully cleared. The heart rate variability patterns were still in the recovery arc. The body was working hard beneath the surface of apparent relaxation. When they mapped specific behavioral signals against the physiological data, licking and chewing appeared consistently in the recovery phase, after the peak of the stress response, as the nervous system was actively downregulating. Not before the stressor. Not during. After. And critically, the intensity and duration of licking and chewing correlated with the intensity of the preceding sympathetic activation. Horses who had experienced higher levels of pressure or confusion showed longer, more pronounced licking and chewing episodes. Horses who had been through relatively gentle, well-timed work showed briefer, more subtle versions of the same behavior. What this tells us is that licking and chewing is not a flat, binary signal. It is not simply present or absent. It is a window into the size and shape of what the horse just processed. And the size of that window tells you something important about the room it's looking into. A brief flick of the tongue after you release a light leg aid? That's a small recovery from a small moment of pressure. Normal. Expected? Fine. The nervous system barely left home base, and it's already returning. A long, sustained episode of licking and chewing, with the head dropping significantly and the jaw working rhythmically for 30, 40, 60 seconds or more. That's a larger recovery from a larger event. Something more significant was activated, and the body needs more time and space to complete the return journey. That deserves your full attention. Not alarm, attention. If this is already changing how you see your horse, and subscribe to the horse soul, because what's coming next is even harder to believe. The research from Utrecht was important, but it was not working alone, and it was not the only piece of the puzzle. At the University of Guelph in Canada, one of the leading centers for equine welfare science in the world, researchers have spent years building detailed behavioral maps of horses, careful documentation of specific behaviors, and their physiological and psychological correlates. One of the areas of focus in their work on training welfare has been what they refer to as the recovery window, the period immediately following the removal of a stressor, during which the horse's physiological systems are actively recalibrating toward homeostasis. During this window, a cluster of behaviors appears reliably. Yawning, which, like chewing, activates the vagus nerve and is a recognized parasympathetic signal in horses. Shaking, particularly shaking out through the neck and shoulders, which researchers believe may serve to discharge residual muscular tension held over from the sympathetic activation. blowing out forcefully through the nostrils, another vaguely mediated behavior associated with respiratory relaxation after the rapid, shallow breathing of the stress response, and licking and chewing. These behaviors, the Guelph researchers emphasize, are not passive signs of comfort. They are active neurological processes. The horse is not simply relaxing the way a person relaxes by sitting down after a long day. The horse's body is doing something specific and purposeful. It is integrating. It is processing. For it is, in the most literal physiological sense, rewriting its nervous system's assessment of the situation from dangerous to safe. That rewrite takes time, and it requires the right conditions to complete. Here is the finding that carries the most direct implications for how we train and for how we think about our moment-to-moment relationship with our horses. The Guelph team found that horses who were not given adequate time within the recovery window, who were asked to continue working before their nervous systems had fully recalibrated, showed accumulating stress patterns over time. Session after session, incomplete recovery stacked on incomplete recovery. The body never quite got all the way back to baseline before the next ask arrived. And over weeks and months, that accumulation changed things. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the slow, quiet way that deep physiological patterns change. The horse's baseline level of tension gradually crept higher. Their tolerance for ambiguity in training decreased, and their recovery window itself began to shorten, but not in the healthy way, where growing confidence reduces the need for extended recovery. In the unhealthy way, where the nervous system stops fully investing in the recovery process because it has learned, somewhere below the level of conscious behavior, that recovery is never going to be allowed to complete anyway. This is why some horses, who appear to be trained correctly, correct releases, correct timing, technically sound work, still develop what experienced riders describe as a dull or shut-down quality. They're responsive, but the responsiveness is hollow. They're obedient, but there's nobody home behind the obedience. They do the things they've been trained to do, but they've stopped offering. They've stopped reaching toward you in those subtle, easy ways that tell you a horse is genuinely engaged. They've learned to comply. And somewhere in the process, they've also learned that the recovery window isn't real, that the pressure will return before the return is complete, and so there is no point in investing in the return. A horse like that is not a well-trained horse, even if the technical results are impressive. A horse like that is a horse that has learned to survive the training process. And knowing that, sitting with that honestly for a moment, changes the way you look at your horse, doesn't it? Here is what all of this means in practice. Here is what changes in your hands, in your body, and in your presence. Not someday, not in theory, but tomorrow morning when you walk into that barn. The first shift is the simplest and simultaneously the hardest. You stop treating licking and chewing as a checkbox. You stop reading it as the signal that the lesson landed, and you can move on to the next thing. Instead, you begin treating it as an invitation. When you see those jaws begin to move, whether you're mounted or working from the ground, whether you're in the middle of a schooling session or finishing a liberty exercise, that is your cue. Not to plan the next thing, not to assess what worked and what didn't. Your cue to arrive fully in that moment with that horse. Breathe. Actually breathe. A deliberate, slow exhale, the kind that drops your shoulders and softens the muscles around your spine. If you're riding, I'd let your seat sink deeper into the saddle rather than perching above it. If you're on the ground, let your weight settle down through your feet. Soften your gaze. Release any tension you're holding in your jaw, because horses are exquisitely sensitive to jaw tension in the humans they work with, and they read it continuously and without effort. Let your nervous system communicate to your horse's nervous system. This moment is not being borrowed from the next one. We are here. We are staying here until you're ready. The second shift is learning to read the quality and character of the licking and chewing, not just its presence. Is it brief? A flicker of the tongue, a single pass of the jaw, and then your horse's attention is already moving outward again. That's a small recovery. Integrate it, honor it, and move on when your horse seems ready. Is it sustained? Is the jaw working rhythmically for a significant period, 30 seconds, a minute, more? Is the head dropping noticeably, the neck softening, the barrel of the rib cage swinging gently with each slow breath? That's a larger recovery. Something more significant was processed. Give it the time it needs, without filling that time with the next ask. Start paying attention to what accompanies the licking and chewing. Is there a sigh, that soft, deep expulsion of breath that is one of the clearest parasympathetic signals in the equine repertoire? Is there a yawn, those full jaw openings that can look almost comical from the outside, but are actually a profound sign of the nervous system releasing stored tension? For does your horse shake out, that whole body movement that starts at the poll and travels all the way through to the tail? These accompanying behaviors amplify what the licking and chewing is already telling you. The recovery is real, and it is going deep. And when you see all of those things together, the lick and chew, the sigh, the yawn, the shake, that is not a moment to rush. That is arguably the most important moment of your entire session. That is your horse's body doing what it needs to do to make the next session possible. Let it happen completely. The third shift takes more courage than the first two, because it challenges something embedded in horsemanship culture, both traditional and modern. The idea that ending on a good note means ending on a successful task completion. The horse did the thing correctly, so you released and rewarded. You call it a day. That structure has genuine merit. But consider expanding your definition of good note to include something else. What if ending on a good note sometimes means ending in the middle of a recovery window? Not always, not rigidly, but more deliberately than you probably do now. What if some of your best sessions ended not because a specific movement clicked into place, but because your horse moved into a deep recovery and you simply stayed there with them, present, unhurried, genuinely there, until they lifted their head and looked at you with soft, quiet eyes, and something felt complete between you? Some of the most significant shifts in the relationship between horses and their humans happen not in the moments of successful execution, but in the moments of quiet afterward, in the moments when nothing is being asked, when the human is simply there, breathing, soft, willing to wait. There is a concept in equine behavioral science called social buffering, the documented phenomenon whereby the calm, regulated presence of a companion reduces the intensity and duration of a stress response in another individual. It has been studied and confirmed across numerous species, including horses. The presence of a relaxed herd member accelerates an individual horse's return to baseline after a frightening event. And the research suggests that a calm, present, regulated human can function similarly during the recovery window, not as a replacement for herd connection, but as a genuine source of co-regulation for a horse who has come to trust that human deeply. Well, what this means is that your horse's recovery from a training session is not happening in isolation from you, even when you step back and give them space. Your nervous system is still in the picture. Your breathing, your muscle tension, your mental state. The horse is reading all of it, continuously, without effort, and calibrating their own recovery in response. A rider who is mentally already 3 exercises ahead, while their horse is still in the recovery window, is not giving their horse space. They are giving their horse a human-shaped distraction that the horse has to navigate, while also trying to regulate their own nervous system. The recovery becomes more effortful, more fragmented, less complete. Whereas a rider who genuinely arrives, who drops the planning, who lets go of the running assessment of what worked and what didn't, who shows up as a calm, regulated, genuinely interested presence, becomes a co-regulator without trying. Their stillness amplifies the horse's recovery. Their ease gives the horse's nervous system permission to go all the way back to baseline, not just part way. This is not soft thinking or sentiment. This is physiology. This is what the research at Utrecht and Guelph and other institutions around the world is beginning to map with increasing precision. The human-horse relationship, in moments of genuine quality, is not a one-way transmission of cues and responses. It is a two-way neurological conversation. And what you bring to the quiet moments matters just as much as what you bring to the active ones. So here is what I want you to try. In your next session, and the one after that, and in the weeks that follow. Not as a rigid protocol, as an experiment you run with genuine curiosity. When your horse licks and chews, stop. Fully stop. Not a mental pause, an actual, embodied stop. Breathe. Feel your feet. Drop whatever you were planning to do next. And watch. Watch the quality of that recovery. Watch how long it takes. Watch what accompanies it. Watch how your horse's eye changes as the parasympathetic system fully regains control. Because it does change. A horse mid-recovery has an eye that is slightly inward, slightly unfocused, turned toward an internal process you can't see, but can learn to respect. And then, when the recovery completes, the eye clears. The attention returns outward. The horse's gaze comes back out to meet the world. That moment, that return, is when you are invited to begin again. Not before. Keep a mental log, or a written one. After sessions of different qualities and intensities, gentle flat work, a challenging jump school, an introduction of a new concept, a day when something didn't go well. Note how long the recovery window lasted and what it looked like. Over weeks and months, that log will show you something more valuable than any performance metric. It will show you the trajectory of your horse's nervous system. It will tell you whether trust is building or whether tension is accumulating. It will show you, in honest terms, how the relationship is actually going. Not how it looks in the videos, not how it compares to some ideal, but how it truly is between the two of you. And if you notice that the recovery windows are growing longer over time instead of shorter, if your horse seems to need more time after sessions, if the licking and chewing is becoming more intense rather than less, that is not a sign of a horse who is deeply processing beautiful, meaningful work. That is a sign that something in the training is asking more of the nervous system than it can fully recover from between sessions. And that deserves honest attention and a willingness to adjust, without guilt, without self-judgment, but with real care. Before I leave you with the last piece of this, drop a comment right now. Tell me your horse's name and the one behavior they do that you've never quite understood. I read every single one. Let's go back to where we started. You're standing at the end of a session. Maybe it was a good one. Things came together. You felt that rare, clean synchrony that keeps horse persons coming back, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. Maybe it was a harder session, one where something didn't quite click, where you both worked through confusion and came out the other side without a clean resolution. Maybe it was just an ordinary afternoon, neither transcendent nor difficult, just two beings working together through the regular texture of shared effort. Either way, you stop, you release, and your horse begins to lick and chew. You know now what that means. Not contentment, not celebration, though something like those things may be present too, further along the recovery arc. What you're seeing is a nervous system in motion, a body that was asked to navigate something and is now finding its way back to equilibrium. A horse that was, in some physiological sense, not entirely at ease, perhaps only slightly, perhaps more significantly, and is now, because you released, because you gave them room, beginning to come home to themselves. And knowing that changes how you receive that moment, doesn't it? It makes it more sacred, not less. Because it's not your horse handing you a trophy. It's your horse's body doing the work of trust. It's the parasympathetic system reclaiming ground that the sympathetic system briefly held. It's the vagus nerve waking back up, the salivary glands coming back online, the jaw moving in that slow, ancient rhythm that says, the danger has passed, the pressure is gone. I am safe with this person. That safety, quiet, physiological, built over hundreds of small moments of honest release and genuine presence, is not constructed in the hard moments. Not primarily. It is built here, in the quiet, in the moments when you could have moved on but you didn't, when you could have added one more repetition, but you chose instead to simply be there, when you were still enough, patient enough, present enough for your horse's body to do what it needed to do completely, without interruption, without hurry. The horses that people describe as having something different, a quality of willingness that goes beyond technique, a depth of connection that feels like it comes from somewhere other than training, a sense that the horse is actively choosing to be with you rather than simply going along because compliance is the path of least resistance. Those horses are not different because of genetics, or because of some rare gift in their rider, or because of any single magical moment that changed everything. They are different because someone, consistently, over time, I'd understood that the space after the ask is as important as the ask itself, that the recovery window is not dead time between exercises, that what happens in the quiet is not nothing. It is, in many ways, everything. The lick and chew is your horse's body processing the world you are building together, one session at a time. It is a signal of trust in progress. Not trust completed, trust being constructed actively in the moment, nerve fiber by nerve fiber, session by session. And every time you honor it, every time you meet it with stillness rather than urgency, with genuine presence rather than mental absence, with patience that is real rather than performed, you are telling your horse something that no cue, no aid, no technical skill, no matter how refined, can communicate on its own. You are telling them, I see you. I'm not rushing you. What you need to do right now matters to me. You are safe here. Not because nothing difficult will ever be asked of you. It will, because that is what growth requires. But because when the difficult thing is done, I will be here, still, waiting, present, until you find your way back. And horses, it turns out, have been waiting a very long time to believe that. If this video found you at the right moment, share it with someone who loves their horse. They need to see this too. And I'll see you in the next one.